My name's Ian Turgeon. I usually would do a technical talk, but I want to do an Angular thing, and then I saw there were two Angular talks before me. So I'm going to step a little bit outside of my comfort zone. This is just random pictures of me. I'm going to talk a little bit about side projects. A lot of people I work with kind of see me as a super driven person because I work way too much. So I figured I'd talk a little bit about kind of how that works for me and maybe motivate some people that want to do some of that stuff. So I work at the University of Central Florida with CDL, the other half of the best buds here. I started as a tech ranger when I was in school, and I've been working there ever since, but kind of split off into our own group. We were doing UI and Flash stuff, and then started doing that at scale and built some systems around it. And now we're kind of back in the same room with the tech rangers, and I think we've got a really cool little setup, and I'm really happy about all the people that work with us and stuff. For those of you that are here, happy about those people. So something that I want to kind of talk about, and this is a hard thing, and I figured I'd start off talking about you guys and your friggin' abilities to do awesome stuff, right? Designers and developers and maybe some project managers and sorts. You guys all kind of have like a unique skill set that's super awesome and it's super valuable, and you're wasting it if you're not using it as much as you possibly can. And I have points here to talk over because I'm terrible at these kinds of talks. I gotta find it. Yeah, so there's this weird thing. I was actually doing some research on this today to kind of go back and look at some of the other finer points I was looking at. And I was listening to a podcast from Patio 11, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But he was talking about this project that he had started as a side project. And after he'd started that, he went and talked. He got the opportunity to talk to one of his coding gods, somebody that he kind of looked up to on blogs and stuff for a while. And he had this interesting conversation with him, and I believe this actually comes from the Jewish faith. This idea that capability equals responsibility. And that's kind of oddly deep, maybe a little bit deeper than I really should go to in a talk like this, but there's this interesting aspect to that. I think that if you're given this special ability to be able to create stuff and be able to execute stuff, that if you're not using it to your fullest extent, then maybe you're wasting a little bit of it, and maybe you're losing some of your responsibility. So that kind of speaks a little bit to this duality of your responsibility in your life and this balance between creating and consuming. And we can talk about consumerism societies and stuff, but I think as far as the stuff that goes with your normal drive and the stuff that gets you going during the day, it's kind of this. It's always this balance, right? I think it's easier to kind of back into the consumerism, I guess, in a day, because you kind of always have to consume stuff, but there's this balance there between people who actually can create stuff. To cut off a portion of their day and actually create stuff. So, talking about the time of your day that's, not spent at work, or not spent, kind of with your family and stuff. There's this portion where you could be creating or consuming, and I think there's an interesting balance there, and kind of like this E equals MC squared kind of equation. There's matter and energy, and there's two sides of this coin, and you kind of have to exchange, and you kind of have to choose what balance you want to choose. Been watching way too much Cosmos, by the way. Every morning I wake up and exercise to Tyson. I forget his whole name right now because I'm in front of everybody. But so the other half of that is the actual creation bit takes inspiration and drive. So the interesting about creating things, taking inspiration and drive, is I think inspiration requires consumption. So it's really easy to kind of slip into this consumption mode where you're like taking in all this very interesting stuff, all these other side projects people are doing. You're like, man, that's cool, that's cool. And it's really easy to kind of continue to do that. And I think there's it's like a backsliding kind of action. So you have to be really conscious about that balance and be really careful if you really want to, utilize your skills. So kind of to cover that, I think the way I deal with this myself is do a lot of side projects. I've been doing side projects since I started. Basically, I learned to code on a side project. And ever since, I've been working at UCF and going to school, started my own company, kind of doing its own thing on the side, and we've been consulting with people, and now we're starting to build some of our own applications. Basically, I work like a ridiculous amount, but this all comes from this drive and this inspiration that I have. So, when I'm consuming stuff, I'm consuming a lot of things, and that builds my inspiration. But I think my drive really comes from this responsibility to do something with that, right? It's kind of a weird problem, but it gets you going. So I found this picture's great. So to kind of talk about how to do side projects and some of the things that I think are best practices about doing side projects, kind of now that we have a little bit of that common language of kind of what I'm talking about, because it's not just like working on the side, it's what are you doing with your time and what are you choosing to do and what do you inspire to do. Maybe your day job is not what you particularly want, although everyone that's here probably enjoys their day job. Or maybe you're going to school and it's like 40 hours of your day, right? So you've got this like 8 hours left over maybe during the week that you kind of have to figure out what you're going to do. So you have to really focus. So the first thing you have to do is you really have to find something you love. I think, is Jesse here? I don't think he came. Jesse, we were just talking over, as a guy who worked for me and works at Riptide now. But he was talking about how he never really is able to get anything done in his side projects. So like get interested in something and start it, and then it just kind of sits and fizzles away. So I think one of the most important things is you have to find something you actually love to do if you want to start a side project and you actually want to have success to be able to finish it, which is ultimately the most important thing. And I have things. I feel like I'm going to burn through this really fast, but at least it's not flickering on me. I'll just jump to 2. So, assuming you find something you actually love to do, the other thing you have to do is really set some attainable goals. So for a side project, this again kind of talks about your limited scale of what you're able to do in this amount of time. Since you don't have a whole lot, you kind of really have to make sure your goals are really attainable. So, maybe you read some stuff and you got really inspired about climbing a giant mountain. It would be a really bad idea to set that as a scale for an accomplishment here. But a good analogy for that is to actually just go visit the base camp and make that your goal. It kind of puts you in the same ballpark. It lets you experience kind of what's going on. There's a great view. You get to rub elbows with the guys that are actually climbing. So the idea is to make sure that your goals are like super attainable. So something you can maybe do in a week or do in 5 weeks, whatever your plan really is. Number 3 is reducing your noise. These are not good. So for me, a lot of my noise is actually other ideas that I get when I'm working on another project, right? So, I come up with some side project and it ends up taking like 6 weeks or longer, depending on how big of a project is. Zach, the other partner in my company, like knows how long some of these things take. And then, things get in the way. So like preparing this has put so much stress on me. This week's been completely shot. So something, all this motivation that kind of comes in, all these inspirational ideas, you kind of have to have a way to stash those. So finding mechanisms to take those and kind of put them in something like Google Keep is like, man, that's a good idea. I'm going to put that over there and then reevaluate later. But that's a big problem. A lot of people have like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and they kind of like flow around and liquidate and never really complete any of those things. Another good thing for reducing your noise is actually surrounding yourself with people that do side projects. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like, there's this odd thing where in all aspects of your life, if you choose to surround yourself with people that are doing things that you want to do, then your life is just better doing, and you're able to commit to those goals and actually complete them. So this is the same thing as like why people want to go work at specific places, because they want to kind of be in that environment, and it's mostly just about being around people that are doing the same kind of thing you want to be doing. Number 4, I think these are in order. So I alluded to this a little bit earlier. This balance between consuming and creating. I think it's like a huge common problem, right? So there's all these things like Game of Thrones and all this stuff that you just have to consume because everybody in your office and all your friends are talking about it. And the new one comes out and you're like 2 weeks behind and you're going to go watch it. So you got to do some of that consuming, but you have to find this balance in how you treat it. This is the same problem. I think it's weird. It kind of reaches into all aspects of your life. You talk about people that maybe have like real imbalances with some things that they're trying to balance, like Alcoholics Anonymous or Overeaters Anonymous. They tend to have these problems where they have to try and find that balance. And I think there's kind of an epidemic with consumerism, and that it's really easy to kind of slip into that and stay there. I believe it's a little bit easier to stay in consumer mode than creator mode. So you kind of have to take these things and build tools around them, right? So one of the things I tend to do is try and reward my creating with consuming. So I'll try to complete some task Sunday morning and then watch Game of Thrones after, I find that actually works really well, but it's extremely hard to kind of commit to. The other thing to kind of think about, and it kind of goes back to like a dieting analogy, is you want to make the stuff that you're working on as easy as you possibly can to start. So if you go on a diet, you have this idea where like, I'm going to take all the stuff that I don't want to eat, but I still have to eat, and put it on the top shelf in the back room. I'll keep it there, and it's a total pain in the ass to get. You don't want it to be on the first shelf in the fridge, So the same kind of thing when you're working on projects. You want to make it really easy to get to your side project. You want to remove as many of those barriers as you can, versus you want to create some barriers for the consumption that you're trying to control, right? So if you have if you're working on your laptop in your living room and the TV's right there and the Xbox is right there, maybe that space needs to be broken up and you need to kind of switch it out so that you kind of work and then play are two separate spaces, because you want to make it easier to work and make it a little bit harder to switch and get distracted. And number 5 is make time. This isn't create time or find time, it's make time. I think I hear this in some discussions. You hear a lot of people say, I don't have the time. We all have the same amount of time. We all have 24 hours in a day. Newton and Einstein, these guys doing great things. They had the same 24 hours we do. Right? So they've just found the right balance, and they were able to execute what they were wanting to do, get passionate around what they were trying to execute, and they found the time to do it. They made the time to do it, right? And then number 6, which is not coming, there we go. I think this is one of the most important but hardest to follow up on is, you have to finally complete your project, of course, but I think the last step is really share the thing. So when you're done with a project, you got to get it out there and you got to show other people. It's super important, no matter how small or how minuscule it is. This is kind of what open source does. This is what a lot of the tech community does. And this is where a lot of my inspiration comes. It comes from other people's side projects that they've finished and decided to share, right? So what is that spawning in everyone else? So I think it's your responsibility after you create something to go ahead and share it as much as you can anyway. So kind of at the end here, these are some of the things that I think are interesting to look at. These are some side projects that kind of turned into big giant things, right? One that's really interesting is, you guys don't know about Bingo Card Creator, but Patio 11, who I talked about before, he didn't know how to program. He was actually in Japan at the time. He started work for a giant Japanese corporation, which has its own issues. I think he's saying he's like working like 16-hour days or something. And he decided on his own time, he had some contact with some teachers to try and build some software to help teachers make bingo cards. Somebody asked him, how do I do this? And his snarky response is just go to Google and type in bingo card software and, click on one of the first 5 things. And the response that he got back was yeah, I did that. It didn't work. Okay. So he went and looked and he saw that it turns out there was nothing that was any good in that realm. So it kind of surprised him. So he put together, he claims, the world's worst Java application to just create some, to help, teachers create bingo cards. And oddly enough, this guy's doing really well now. But it started to take off, and eventually it made more money than his daytime job. And he was like, well, why the hell am I working during the day for this? And he's kind of taken that aspect, and it's kind of blossomed the rest of his career. He's doing a couple other things, and now he's like this entrepreneur that's kind of looking for problems. It's kind of an interesting story. I have links if you're interested in hearing about it. Time is a super recent thing. This is an app that I don't know exactly how long ago, but I just read about it last week. He launched a mobile app and got 455,000 downloads in the first week. Some ridiculous thing, and he has a nice blog post of like how this happened, and it's funny. At the first part, he talks about how well structured and all the research he did, and in the middle he's like, none of that happened though. And at the end, it's like, well, I don't know, I just glued some stuff together, and here's why I think it worked. And some of the things that he talked about were really interesting. He talked about his app. Basically, this is actually a pretty funny app because it actually kind of coincides with the talk a little bit. It's a way to calculate how much time you've wasted in your life watching TV shows. So you just type in, like, I've watched all of Game of Thrones, and then it does the calculation for you about how much time that's consumed, and then you can enter all the things and figure out what portion of your life you've been wasting, or consuming, I guess. But it's been crazy popular, and the little story is kind of interesting, right? So AudioFile, I don't know if anybody's heard of AudioFile, but you've heard of the results of AudioFile. So this kid this is quite a while ago, was working in File Manager Pro. I don't know what my time is like. File Manager Pro. He's trying to like organize his audio collection, which is something like every entry like CS I want to build something kind of does. And none of the things out there were any good, so he put it together. He put together his own. He figured, I'll learn this thing. He put it together, and he released it as shareware back in the days of shareware. And just put a little in the README file, like send me $20 and here's my address if you like it, And he released it out into the world, and I believe he said his first paycheck came from it was like this air post from Germany. The guy's like, thanks, and there's just $20 in the mail. And then his parents, he was a teenager at the time, and his parents were like, what the hell's going on? People are just sending our kid money in the mail. So this is Jason Fried from 37 Signals, if you don't know the story. So he went on to make Basecamp, and he's got some interesting background. Litmus, along the same lines, this guy in his college dorm decided to set up a bunch of servers and basically do like browser shots on these machines to try and do, it was something that wasn't available at the time. It's a huge company now. It's kind of an interesting story. And of course, Craigslist, to put one on the list that you probably heard of. This guy, I'm going to make an email list with my friends on his part-time side job thing. It was nothing, right? And then it kind of just kept snowballing into who knows what. So the idea with the side project is, it's fun and it contributes and it inspires other people, but you never know wherever the hell it's going to land up. And a couple of the things I'm working on right now, just to plug my stuff, I don't know why. Working on Howtoon, which is something I started a long time ago. It's like, this is actually the reason I learned to program, is to try and create how-to articles for people who are like working on their own cars. At first it was like for this specific car that I had, I would write some articles as I bought some new toy for it and I would bolt it on. But I decided to go back and revisit this. And with the help of Zach, we've kind of put together something that allows anybody to do this and actually try and pay them for it as well. It's kind of cool. NVRate, something we're working on soon to try and, it's kind of like a shopping platform. And then what I really wanted to talk about is Crafted, which I was really hoping to have done for today because it was coinciding with stuff, but it didn't happen. Crafted is an attempt I'm trying to do to, basically, you can imagine this, the first release will be Crafted in Orlando. But the idea was you could kind of find web projects that were developed locally. So you could everyone can post something that they've developed here. It'd just be like their side projects or their real projects. I believe I found Orlando.io, which is more of a focus on the individuals.
The business, and the developers.
Yeah, the actual people. It's kind of funny because that was paralleling this, and I had no idea it existed until a couple of days ago. So Orlando.io is kind of about the people, and this was a little bit more just about the projects and the companies that build them. So with the advice of Shay today, we're thinking about maybe integrating with what they're doing. So they cover the people and I cover the projects. But as soon as that's released, I'll try and spread it on all the things. So if you happen to care, then you can follow me on something. But hopefully, if you have a side project or a real project, you can add it there. And that's it. Does anybody have side projects that they work on regularly?
Sketches.
Sketches?
Yeah, I often do the same thing. I talk to some people that here's a problem that needs to be solved, and I'll start spinning it up. I have other stuff I work on with other people who I talk to, and of course my own personal ideas and stuff. And so I've been really trying to even just recreate my own website every year or so, just because I have something new I want to make out of it. And that's the biggest thing for me. Whenever I make something, it's like, oh, I want to redo it again. But
Yeah.
there's this other new thing I can do too. But
Portfolio sites are an amazing burden for everyone, I think. They're out of date as soon as they're done, and then you're not happy with them. But I think they're a fantastic way to learn stuff. That's like trying to keep your resolution pretty small of like learning a new side project. Just like pick one technology, don't pick 15, and try and learn that and add it and update what you're trying to build. I'll go away as soon as everybody. Okay. Thank you.